Hello and welcome to Moonlit Voyage. We are your hosts, Ali and
Olga.
We are just two people who love to dream, from common dreams to lucid dreaming and even past life experiences. We would like to share with you our personal dreams, unravel the meanings behind them, and how they can connect to our spiritual paths.
In this episode, Ali recounts a dream in which her subconscious messaging reveals a frustration with not being able to communicate her truth and live as her authentic self. She calls it Big Birds, Little Birds.
Last night I dreamt that I was in a nice, really nice apartment in the city, New York City. Very modern, very new. In this apartment, it had, I remember, it had a structure of big windows, right? And the back part was kind of slanted, like a triangle, right? And then there was like a roof, like a terrace. It was very beautiful, very, very comfortable terrace, right? And I decided to go to the terrace to get some sun, some fresh air. In that time, I was sharing this apartment because it was an expensive apartment in the dream, with two other people, which are my friends now. And I remember that I went outside in the terrace, and the terrace had a ocean view. And I remember it was a clear blue sky. And as I was looking up, I saw that there were planes, there were helicopters, there was all these different aircrafts that were stuck in midair, kind of like looking to see where to go. And a flock of birds, big birds like size of seagulls, right, were flying. They were crashing into the building, into the windows. They had like an orange tint to them, and my thought was that the reason there was such confusion was because there was a shift, a magnetic field shift within the earth, and that's why the birds kept crashing into buildings, and the aircrafts couldn't find the compass. They weren't finding their way. So I run downstairs into my apartment to wake my roommates up, and just remembering now that as I was walking, I was trying to get in, but getting into the room, into the apartment, was very complicated. It was like a maze almost, but like picture a maze but against the wall. And finally I got to them, and I was warning my friend, and I'm like, my roommate, my friend, but they were still like half asleep. They weren't understanding what I was trying to tell them. And then I remember seeing, when I looked down in the ocean, in the water, there were skeleton figures, but as if the whole ocean, the whole body of water was covered with these skeletons, these white looking skeletons, and they were tied into the seaweeds. It's like they were tied down. So I try to get out of the building and see what's going on outside. And as I'm opening the door of the building to get out into the street, I see an old friend from high school. And it was an accident. I accidentally bumped into her, and I'm like, "Oh, hi, how are you? What are you doing here?" And she actually came here to see another friend. But since we haven't seen each other for years, she was like, "Oh, yeah, like, how are you? Let's catch up. So she left her other friend and she came with me, and I remember seeing from afar, like across the street, from afar, there were some of our common friends, and they have shopping bags, but they were looking towards me like with judgment, right? But we still, I told her to come into my apartment, and we catched up, and that was pretty much the end of the dream.
Wow, that was great. Wow. Okay. So do you mind if I ask you some questions?
No.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So I'm going back to the beginning of the dream. I made a few notes, and what strikes you the most? Like, what about the dream? Like when you came out of the dream, what was the thing that kind of impacted you the most, or that you felt like was a really strong message?
Okay, so when I go back to the feeling that I felt in the dream, because it's all about feeling with me in my dreams. Mm-hmm. That's how I come back with them. And right now, how I put myself back into that feeling, I felt frustration. I was trying to get to certain people. I was trying to communicate something important. And there was just obstacles. And that's how I feel now in the real world, non-dream world.
Right.
And because these two people especially that are in my life, I feel that we share a lot of deep conversations, meaningful conversations. I feel like they're in the same frequency as me, but somewhere along the line, I lose them. For example, in the sense of, hey, what do you think about vaccination? They've already told me their take about this vaccination and what they feel about it, and I have a different feeling about it. And I know that I have to be swiftly in how I convey my communication, because I don't want to be rough with people. I want to be effective. I don't want it to come from ego. I want them to just know. I want them to open their eyes and know there's other information out there, that it's not only what the media is feeding you. They need to be wary about that. And because of everything that's going on now, I think it manifested into my dream of that type of, it's the obstacles of, it was what I saw in the sky, right? Unreachable. And then the obstacle of getting to them, which was the maze to get into my own apartment. And when I finally reached to them, they were still half asleep, when I'm trying to alert them about it. And then somewhere along the line, and maybe I kind of just give up. I'm just like, or not give up, maybe give them time. Maybe that's what I'm doing in reality. I don't want to pose my beliefs, so-called beliefs, into people because I want them to hear me, or have just how I know that with the internet, that it's in the reach of our hands. It's fast information that's coming through us. We are able to choose what information to consume. And it is now at the time that you choose to be ignorant, because the information is out there. Now you just have to reach out even further, because things have gotten smarter in fogging the information or leading you to think different things. So I think I'm rambling now. But
well, no, I think you're making complete sense. So I'm just going to tie all of that to the symbols, right? So typically for me, and what I understand about what birds are both in antiquity as well as in some of the arts that I study, like tarot and right birds. They communicate through the air, right? And air usually, right, the air, the waves is, right, the internet is what you're talking about. And it's like there's these really strong messages, right? Birds are known as messengers, right? So if you think of like the crow in the bird, the crow
Right.
that takes messages from one place to
Yes.
another, and so just to make that association, right? There's these messages or information that you are trying to give to others that keep crashing up against this building. So like you send them off in flight, but then they're stopped, right? And it's against a slanted building nonetheless. It's not a building that's upright and standing up straight. It's one that's slanted, so that maybe it's off kilter. Right. So
Okay.
maybe that building being off kilter or slanted is representative of maybe the other person's consciousness. Right. And your messages or what you're speaking about, right, is just kind of like, crashing up against them, and maybe their belief systems or things that they can't quite, they have a cognitive dissonance
Exactly.
too. Right. The other interpretation for the birds themselves is the internet itself. I said it earlier, and I think you alluded to it as well. It is that that there are these messages that maybe aren't quite on the up and up, right? And they're not synchronistic. They're not working with what you said. That there was a magnetic shift, right? And that was the reason why the buildings were not the buildings, but the birds were crashing.
Yeah.
It's because they don't have access. These either the messages are not within or working with the natural way that information is communicated. In other words, it's being thwarted,
Right.
right? And or maybe massaged, right?
Masked.
Masked. So the craft in the sky that we're standing still. What do you? The interpretation that I got, or the thing that it immediately made me think of, were these again. These craft are also referred to as birds, right? When you're talking about a helicopter, or you're talking about a plane, you're also talking about a bird.
Yeah.
That you can use that word, and again, so then that's also communication, but just on a bigger scale, on a larger scale.
Right.
And to me, the first thing that came through was the secrets, right? Maybe big, large secrets, or maybe things or large concepts left unsaid. Right? So if you think about it, maybe from what you were just saying, right, with your friends, and it kind of not sticking, and they're not maybe in the same frequency as you
Yeah.
are, that it leaves these conversations hanging in the air,
Yeah.
and things maybe
Untouched.
maybe things left unsaid, or you cannot finish them, but they're very large subjects,
Yeah.
right? Very big concepts to have to tackle. And then the other, like I said, was, these, as far as the internet and, conspiracy theory things,
yeah.
right? That there are these, secrets or things that are being, kind of held. Because again, the magnetic shift, it applied to, you were applying it to, in the telling of your dream, to both the organic birds as well as the equipment and electronic birds. And if that's the case, then, these big secrets or things being held or in suspension, right? Because they weren't crashing anything. They were just being held there,
Yeah.
and not quite getting to their destination, which is to the larger, to the collective,
Yeah.
to the people.
And now that you're saying that, this thought came to my mind that I see aircrafts as military. I see military as they have a lot of secrets.
Bingo. Very
that.
nice. Well, I mean, we can move on to another, one of the symbols that I connected to. So you couldn't get into the room. It was like a complicated maze. That was one. And then the other was that you were on a balcony. right? So just to kind of underline the balcony and the way that I saw the balcony, it was exactly what you were saying, which was, seeing things maybe from a higher perspective, or maybe seeing things with a bird's eye view,
Yes.
possibly.
Exactly. High.
Because you said that the balcony was on the roof,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which is the
yeah.
highest you could go on that building. You can't go
was,
any
yeah.
further. And then, having to come down and look for your roommates, but that you couldn't get to the room because it was complicated.
Yes.
What does that mean? Do you feel like that also refers to the way that you have to maneuver yourself?
The way I have to talk to them.
Yeah.
Without checking my ego, and without hurting feelings or shaking the floor beneath people, right? I have to be sensitive. I have to walk on eggshells.
And you can't really be yourself.
Yeah. Not fully. And that's the whole struggle, because I feel very comfortable with these people, but I can't fully disclose everything, right? Not everything that's on my mind, even though like there's that temptation to do it.
Right. Well, there's consideration. I mean, and that's you wanting to consider the other, right, and not do to anyone that you care about what we perceive, the government is doing to us, or things like that. Okay. I saw the room and the maze as being these veils of like either veils of forgetfulness, right? So you're on your way to go and talk to your friends and try to give them some information, maybe about the birds that are outside and what's happening outside. But there's these veils that you have to get through that are very complicated in order to be able to, right? And it's veils not only for you in getting to the information, but also their veils, which is just to say that we kind of picked up on the same thing in terms of the interpretation, right? But I just used different vocabulary for basically the same thing. And then the next was that they were in a daze and they couldn't understand. And so the next one is really interesting, which is the body of water. So when you were on the balcony at the top of the roof and you were looking down, you saw the skeletons underneath the water, and it was the entire ocean
full of them,
and they were tangled, right, in seaweed. So how did that spark anything for you? Or
some people, they interpret skeletons as death, right? And fear. I didn't feel fear. I felt confusion. But I have this theory, right, that ocean is life. The beginning of life started within the ocean. And I see a lot of documentaries, and it always intrigues me, the nature of the ocean, and how we only have discovered like only a small percentage of our own ocean waters in the world. There's still so much
to explore.
And I feel that if we don't take care of it now as humans, and I feel that's our role and our purpose here on earth, that's our giving back to what we've received from the earth. Giving back is caring for the planet, and that is how I see it, how there's a lot of death that's happening in our oceans, a lot of plastic, and that's causing a lot of death through the animals. And I just saw it like, that's our own destructive behavior. And even though I saw the skeletons of humans, not of animals, I feel that in reality it's animals that are dying in the ocean from our own doing.
Yeah.
And eventually it will bring our own ruin into it. because we're all connected.
Right. Wow. That's really, really interesting. I mean, I did have a different interpretation in it, and I do see the skeletons as a representation of death for sure. I see the seaweed as these things that we're getting tangled up in, but I see it as humankind, right? And humankind. So I'll just backtrack. For me, in my understanding, water, just like air represents communication, water represents emotion. And the fact, I mean, you could have been looking out at a different landscape. Like you could have been looking at a forest or at a desert or at right. You're looking at water, and so like I said, water and emotion to me are connected, and that the skeletons underneath the water represented, considering kind of what we're talking about in terms of conspiracy theories, is a fear of death, an emotional triggered fear of death that you are getting tangled. You're getting tangled up in, right? So, it's something that because you say, oh, we'll just snap out of it. Well, you're tangled up in it.
Because I was fearful seeing those birds just falling, crashing, and dying, and then when I felt that fear is when I saw down the water filled with skeletons.
Yeah. And what it came across to me, because it was the skeletons across the entire ocean, that it was related to the collective, which is why I was, kind of pushed towards thinking about this dream from a broader perspective and not a personal one, but a very collective, right? And because clearly, one of the things that we're tangled up in is, COVID, vaccinations, government control, silencing conspiracy of our First Amendment. There's a lot of things that you could get tangled up in, and that could make you feel fearful at this time and emotionally, distraught. But particularly COVID strikes a nerve, right? Because it speaks specifically to, your ability to, survive this.
I feel like
dis-ease.
The birds were the truth, the natural communication messages, the truth communications that were just crashing, we're not getting to this destination. And then the aircraft birds were controlled information.
So many layers. I love it. All right, and so then we finally get to the part where you pass the maze, you pass your friends, you get down to the bottom of the building, and you open the doors, and you're at the front of the building, at the concrete, right? And you come across an old friend that you left with, or did your friend come into the house with you? I can't remember.
She came in. I let her in.
Okay, so she came in, but before she came in, there were friends that were there.
When I opened the door, because I was leaving the building to see what was happening, as soon as I opened it, I saw her in front of me. It was a surprise. It was like a surprise visit, but she wasn't there for me. And then I saw across the street, like the friends that we shared, in high school with.
Right. Yeah. And they had disdain for you? Was it maybe not disdain, but like a little gossip or something like that, right? A little judgment. That's what it was. I remember you using the word, and I couldn't remember it. So, what do you think that means?
Well, in the dream, I felt familiarity, and I think that's what calmed my nerves in the dreams and made me forget what was happening. It made me forget the urgency.
Right.
And that I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, if definitely feels to me like there is, a perception maybe of, because clearly this person that you're inviting into the house, you have an objective with the people who are both in the house, and then you're inviting this new person as well, right? Is an old friend, which denotes familiarity and comfort, like you just said. And maybe trying with that person as well to share
Yeah, maybe.
some of your
Maybe
thoughts
about
about whatever it was that you were trying to share with your roommates, maybe sharing it with this friend as well, and hopefully having a different receptivity based off of the prior relationship with them.
Yep.
But also knowing and understanding that there are judgment from others, right? And that just being an acknowledgement,
Yeah.
right? That because of what you believe, because of what you know, and knowing that not everyone does, or right, that there's going to be judgment, right? But you accept this one person in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that risk of judgment, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dreams are very often a reflection of what ails us, themes that can be replayed while we sleep, pointing to areas in our lives that need some attention. And others, like this one, can reveal layers of meaning, from the deeply personal, expanding out to the broader collective. Very interesting. Well, friends, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, we invite you to wake up through your dreams.
We would love to hear from you, so feel free to leave your comments, questions, or suggestions below of what you would like to hear next. Click the subscribe button to our YouTube channel and receive notifications for additional thought-provoking content.